no way you would describe that as completely spoiled, damaged beyond repair. So why on earth did they say that at the time? I find that absolutely gobsmacking.
Yes, perhaps one of the reasons is that Paul Delaroche, the artist, in the 1830s, was one of the most famous painters in the world. By 1900, he was almost utterly forgotten. And so there must have been no great energy to put effort into saving this picture at that moment. And in fact, in one of the lists, they say that the works destroyed were of no aesthetic interest whatsoever.
And so a painting like this was considered of no aesthetic value whatsoever.
Aesthetically, they didn't see the importance of it, so they seem just to have rolled it up with other pictures and turned their attentions elsewhere.
All this is making me wonder then if the Landseer we're looking at, which is also described as damaged in the flood, in fact, like this painting, wasn't that badly damaged, but was kind of tucked away and just forgotten about because no one valued it. Aesthetically, they didn't really rate it.
This may very well be the case, that Landseer's popularity had diminished as well, and decisions had to be made, and it was pushed aside.
And so maybe, what, pass it on?
Yes, yes.
Sold
to a
it,
student,
I don't know.
Maybe you can learn something from this.
And therefore, the painting that we are investigating could be one and the same painting that was listed as being damaged in the floods.
Stranger things have happened. And this is the living proof that a picture can come back to life.
It seems extraordinary, doesn't it, that a painting like Lady Jane Grey would just be rolled up and forgotten about it. You can't imagine that happening today. But, you know, the Tate back then wasn't the powerhouse in the art world that it is now, and they just didn't have the means or the resources to conserve all the paintings damaged in the flood, and inevitably, some fell by the wayside, even a painting like Lady Jane Grey.
Back in Edinburgh, Aviva has come to the Scottish National Gallery on an evidence-gathering mission. To determine whether Kathy and Barry's picture is the work of Landseer or a copy by another hand, we need to compare the pigments with known works by the artist. The gallery has agreed to let Aviva study Landseer's The Monarch of the Glen.
It's really a massive treat to be here in the gallery, having the painting taken down, especially for us to look at. It's fantastic.
Landseer's most famous masterpiece has been valued at £8 million. A team of specialist art handlers ensure it's safely off the wall.
Of course, they have to be really careful because the paintings are very heavy and, you know, one slip could be a disaster.
Aviva can now get to work to discover what this masterpiece is made of.
What I'm using today is an X-ray fluorescent spectrometer, and it's a technique of non-invasively, so it doesn't damage the painting at all, looking at the elements in the pigments. And from that, we can identify the pigments with luck and compare them to the painting that we're investigating.
This data will allow Aviva to go back in time to the very ingredients he used to make this masterpiece.
Back in London, I've come to the Tate Gallery. I keep finding that works recorded as destroyed in the flood have since turned up. John Martin's The Destruction of Pompeii was rediscovered in the 70s, badly damaged, but not destroyed. Thanks to the painstaking work of Tate conservators, it's now been extensively restored. I'm hoping conservation manager Jane McCree can help me make sense of these conflicting records. What's so intriguing about this painting is not only its magnificence, obviously, but in this Tate catalogue from the 1950s, it is described as a work destroyed and omitted from the catalogue. But we now know that just wasn't true. It was actually forgotten about.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if that could be the case with art. I mean, how can that happen?
First of all, there wasn't a conservation department here at Tate in the 20s. It didn't come into existence until the 50s. In the 70s, the department grew, and I think there was then the opportunity to re-look at these paintings that were listed, as you say, omitted from the collection.
Records from the Tate suggest that some pictures recorded as destroyed in the flood had been written off too hastily. In this list here, there's a note written in 1970, found only slightly damaged and re-entered into the collection. And here we have the damage and the restored painting.
Yeah, and I think different eyes at different points in history make different decisions, I guess, but with a modern take, that to me is repairable.
So all this makes me wonder, of course, as if the original Lancia war wasn't damaged beyond repair, and it wasn't destroyed, in fact. Have you got any records of it at all?
We don't have a conservation record for war. We do, however, have a record from peace, which is its companion painting.
So that's this document here?
Yes.
Nothing can be done. There is no painting except the original canvas support, 2 exclamation marks, destroyed in flood of 1928.
And if you look at another Lancia painting that was damaged in the flood, The Maid and the Magpie, which visualises that damage, you can see very clearly that nothing remains but the canvas and a few fragments of paint.
That is slightly horrifying, I must say.
And we have an archival book that was found in the Conservation Archive.
And this was written when?
The catalogue's from 1937 to 38.
So we've got peace, finished in flood, then we've got war, destroyed in flood, and then it says finished in flood.
It feels quite finite, indicating perhaps nothing remains of them.
I mean, surely there has to be a chance, doesn't there? Given you've got no record of it, but we know that works that were listed as destroyed were not destroyed. There has to be some kind of chance, doesn't there, that it still exists somewhere?
Personally, I don't think so, and I don't think the evidence points in that way from our Tate archive. It's unlikely, I think.
We need a body, though, Jane, that's the thing. You know, I mean, without an actual body, it's hard to let go of this completely. Back at the gallery, the plot thickens. I understand why the Tate feels that it's very unlikely that Lancia's time of war survived the flood. I mean, that word finished is pretty damning, isn't it? But I've been looking closely at the conservation records, and look what I found. There's a listing here of a painting by Lance George called Fruit Piece.